Ever wonder about the roots of Canadian history? Let's take a journey back, starting with the Indigenous peoples. The Indigenous peoples of Canada, a rich tapestry of diverse cultures, were the original inhabitants of this vast land. From the Inuit in the Arctic, the Woodland First Nations in the east, to the Plains people in the west, each group shared a profound bond with the environment, a bond that defined their lifestyle, traditions, and spirituality. This connection to the land was not simply about survival, it was a relationship of respect, reciprocity, and reverence. Indigenous peoples weren't just passive elements of the landscape, they actively shaped and nurtured it. Their knowledge, wisdom, and innovations have left an indelible mark on Canada's history. Even today, we see their influence in the arts, languages, and environmental stewardship. Their influence weaves a vibrant cultural fabric that still resonates in Canada today. The arrival of Europeans marked a significant shift in Canadian history. Enter Jacques Cartier and Samuel de Champlain, two intrepid French explorers whose voyages brought them to the shores of what would become Canada. Cartier, in the mid-16th century, was the first to map the Gulf of St. Lawrence, opening up the interior of the continent. Champlain, on the other hand, sailed a few decades later, establishing Quebec City and earning the title Father of New France. Their explorations were driven by more than just curiosity. Europe had developed an insatiable appetite for fur, particularly beaver pelts, used to make fashionable felt hats. And so, the fur trade began in earnest, with the Indigenous peoples playing an integral role as partners and intermediaries in this lucrative business. This wave of exploration and commerce had profound, lasting impacts, leading to alliances, conflicts, and transformations among the indigenous societies. Their expeditions laid the groundwork for the European presence in North America. From exploration came settlement, leading to the establishment of New France. This was a period of great challenges, yet also remarkable resilience and growth. The early settlers faced harsh conditions, long, brutal winters, unfamiliar terrain, and the constant threat of conflict. The survival of New France hinged on its relationship with the indigenous peoples. Indeed, the alliances with indigenous nations were pivotal. They provided guidance, shared knowledge of the land, and engaged in crucial trade relations. This relationship was not always harmonious, however, as cultural misunderstandings and territorial disputes often led to tension. Despite these struggles, New France expanded. It grew from a precarious outpost to a thriving colony stretching from Newfoundland to the Great Lakes and down the Mississippi River. Its population increased, and with it, the French language and Catholic faith took root in North America. New France was a critical chapter in Canada's history, shaping the nation's future. It set the stage for the cultural diversity and bilingualism that are key aspects of Canada's identity today. War is a catalyst for change, and the 7 Years' War was no exception. This global conflict, often dubbed the First World War, was particularly transformative for the vast, untamed lands that would become Canada. The war saw two European powerhouses, Britain and France, grapple for control over territories across the globe, with North America as a prime battleground. Though the conflict was far-reaching, we'll focus on the North American theater, where the war was better known as the French and Indian War. Fierce battles raged from 1756 to 1763, profoundly shaping the future of the continent. The war ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1763, a landmark agreement that significantly redrew the map of North America. France ceded most of its territories, including New France, to Britain. This transfer of power marked a pivotal turning point in the history of the region, setting the stage for the British dominance that would characterize the next century. This pivotal event led to a significant shift in power in North America. Revolution south of the border had significant implications for Canada. As the American Revolution erupted in 1775, a wave of political refugees known as Loyalists fled north to escape the turmoil. These were individuals who remained faithful to the British Crown, and their arrival in droves would lead to significant changes in the landscape of Canada. The number of English-speaking settlers suddenly skyrocketed, and the British government saw the need to restructure their territories. To accommodate these new settlers and manage the cultural tensions between the French and English-speaking populations, the Constitutional Act of 1791 was enacted. This legislation effectively split the province of Quebec into two separate entities: Upper Canada, predominantly English-speaking, and Lower Canada, largely French-speaking. These divisions, although politically expedient at the time, laid the groundwork for the cultural and linguistic divisions that continue to characterize Canada today. The American Revolution was more than just an American affair. It shaped Canada as well. 1867 marked a milestone in Canadian history, the Confederation. A significant event, it was when the provinces came together under the British North America Act. The provinces, previously separate British colonies, found unity, forming a federation under the Crown. This act of political ingenuity was the brainchild of key figures including John A. Macdonald and Georges-Étienne Cartier. The Confederation was not just a political realignment, it was an economic strategy too. It brought about a common market, breaking down interprovincial barriers. It was a time of transformation where the seeds of a modern nation were sown. While the road to Confederation was not without its challenges, its success represents an essential part of Canada's identity. It set the stage for the country's future growth and expansion, paving the way for Canada to become the diverse and inclusive nation it is today. The Confederation was the birth of the Canada we know today. With Confederation came expansion and growth. The late 19th and early 20th centuries marked a significant phase in Canada's history. The construction of the Canadian Pacific Railway, a monumental engineering feat, was a central part of this expansion. This railway didn't just connect the vast Canadian provinces from coast to coast, but also opened up new opportunities for trade, settlement, and exploration. This period also witnessed a significant influx of immigrants, drawn by the promise of a prosperous life in Canada's expanding territories. People from diverse backgrounds and cultures arrived, adding to the rich tapestry of the nation's identity. They worked in mines, factories, and on the railroad itself, contributing significantly to the burgeoning economy. The railroad and the wave of immigration were intertwined, each fueling the other, shaping the destiny of Canada. The growth and prosperity that followed set the stage for the country we know today. These developments propelled Canada into a new era of prosperity. The 20th century was a period of rapid change and growth for Canada. The World Wars marked a significant turning point for the nation. During the First World War, over 600,000 Canadians served overseas, with a devastating loss of over 60,000 lives. The Second World War saw over 1 million Canadians in uniform, with more than 40,000 making the ultimate sacrifice. Yet, these grim times also sparked an economic boom. War industries sprouted across the country, transforming Canada from a primarily agrarian society into an industrial powerhouse. The post-war era saw a wave of social and cultural changes, particularly in Quebec. The Quiet Revolution, a period of intense socio-political and socio-cultural change, challenged traditional norms and led to a more secular society. It was during this time that Canada truly began to embrace multiculturalism, opening its doors to immigrants from all corners of the globe. In the midst of these changes, Canada sought to further define its sovereignty. The patriation of the Constitution in 1982 was a pivotal moment. This meant that Canada could now amend its own constitution without needing Britain's approval. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms, part of this constitution, is now a cornerstone of Canadian identity, protecting individual rights and freedoms. The late 20th century also saw Quebec grappling with questions of identity and sovereignty. Two referendums were held, in 1980 and 1995, on the question of Quebec's independence. Both times, the people of Quebec voted to remain part of Canada. These referendums tested the fabric of the nation, but ultimately they underscored the commitment of Canadians to maintaining unity amidst diversity. Through these events, Canada emerged as a diverse, prosperous, and unified nation. From the battlefields of the World Wars to the social upheaval of the Quiet Revolution, from the patriation of the Constitution to the Quebec referendums, the 20th century was a crucible that shaped Canada into the vibrant, multicultural country it is today. As we step into the 21st century, Canada continues to evolve. This era sees the nation take on an increasingly prominent role in international affairs, from peacekeeping missions to the fight against global warming. Canada's commitment to diplomacy and international cooperation has become a defining characteristic of its global persona. On the home front, Canada's economy has seen impressive growth. The expansion of the tech sector, particularly in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, has spurred innovation and attracted talent from around the globe. But perhaps the most significant progress has been in the realm of social issues. Canada has emerged as a leader in championing human rights. From the legalization of same-sex marriage in 2005 to the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which addresses the historical injustices against the Indigenous peoples. Canada's story is still being written and its future holds endless possibilities. So, that's a whirlwind tour of Canadian history. We've journeyed through the rich tapestry of Indigenous cultures, the explorations and fur trade, the establishment of New France, and the transformative 7 Years' War. We've witnessed the creation of Upper and Lower Canada, the Confederation, the railroad expansion, and the immigrant influx. We've navigated the World Wars, the Quiet Revolution, the patriation of the Constitution, and the Quebec referendums. From its Indigenous roots to its multicultural present, Canada's history is as diverse and expansive as the country itself.